regression analysis is where I found positive outlier teachers who, despite the challenges of whatever area they were teaching in, got incredible results. And so I decided to sneak into their classrooms and try and study what they did. The first video I took looks like bad wedding video. I was standing in the back of the room with a jittery camera, but what I got in that video was incredible because you've all been in the classroom of a master teacher. And so I started to collect that video and turn it into game tape and just label it with concrete, observable techniques that people could use and adapt and replicate. And one thing I just like to say about Teach Like a Champion is, to me, it's not a formula. I hope everyone knows that it's a set of tools, and a set of tools always requires a craftsman or craftsperson. And by the way, one of the teachers that I've had the pleasure of studying in the course of writing about videos is our own Josh Goodrich, who had some really outstanding videos that we showed for a long time in our workshops. And perhaps we're still waiting to, show up wherever you're working your magic with our cameras. So
you'll be waiting a long time for that.
Awesome, thank you. Very succinct, Doug. Josh, how does that link to the Steplab origin story?
Well, I think my origin story is very closely related to TLAC because I was a kind of a lost teacher in a school before I found Teach Like a Champion, doing a whole bunch of pretty mad stuff and learning through trial and error, with like more on the error side. And I think that's the same for lots and lots of teachers, who are around the UK and in fact around the world. Now, I discovered Teach Like a Champion. It absolutely transformed my practice. And then I started looking after other teachers. And I tried to get loads of teachers implementing Teach Like a Champion techniques in their classrooms. And I found that even with like the genuine brilliance of the TLAC content, the traditional PD methods, which lots of schools rely on, like I think help teachers to learn a bit too slowly than like students need and deserve, basically. So I was like, tried to learn more about kinds of PD that help teachers to learn quickly. One of which is practice-based PD, and like so, Doug's Practice Perfect was super, super helpful in influencing my thinking. And the second was research and work around instructional coaching. So then I kind of like, I want to do practice-based PD, I want to do instructional coaching, tried to make it work in the school, which I was helping to lead at the time, and found that it was really difficult to do. It's really hard to help a coach or a teacher educator select the appropriate high quality step. It's really hard to run a feedback meeting containing all the good stuff, modeling and rehearsal and planning and implementation planning. And it's really hard for a school leader to lead a practice-based PD and coaching program, like super, super hard. So basically I built a bunch of tools for myself, moved to leading PD across a trust and built other tools for myself, and basically continued to do that over the years at various schools and trusts, and iterating and putting on new tools that make the life of coaches and PD leads as easy as possible. And Steplab kind of pops out the other side. That's a bit about, that's kind of how the tool was made.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. And I think like one of the things that unites both organizations beyond a strong passion for giving students the best possible start in life, and trying to make sure that we do that as equitably as possible, is in the value of a good video model, a good video. And I certainly have seen in my work with schools that like a video, well, if a picture paints 1,000 words, a video can paint 1,000,000 words, really. It's very hard to kind of hide from a video, and often teaching is too complex to describe in words alone. So when we try just to kind of describe a practice, it's usually nowhere near enough. Hence the kind of video being 1,000,000 words. It allows us to have 1,000,000 words in our description. And I think it's probably time now to just like jump straight into some video if you're up for it. And so we're going to start by watching a video that Doug suggested might be interesting for us to watch. It's going to be about 4 minutes long. I'm going to play it now. We'll watch it right the way through, and then we'll come together and Doug and Josh can have a bit of a discussion. You want Doug?
No, I was gonna offer to roll the video and stop it a few times, but you have a game plan, and let's go with Pep's plan A.
Yeah, or feel free to like stop it.
Actually, this is real. I think this is really interesting. One of my theories about video is that 3 minutes is about the most that anybody can absorb because it's so information rich, and you get working memory overload. So I think it's actually really important to when you're studying video with teachers to pause it and let people discuss and unpack their work, unload their working memory. So maybe let's just like watch a minute and a half or 2 minutes, pause, chat about it a little bit, and then talk about what else we're seeing in the second half of the video.
Perfect. Let's do that. Okay. Sharing video now.
Can I say a tiny bit about it?
Yeah, please do.
So I love this video so much. Shot this year. It's an incredible year 4 classroom in shot outside Birmingham in Walsall, which many of you may know is just an area with a lot of very high level of economic deprivation. And this is just a beautiful, beautiful classroom with incredible teaching craft. And maybe the most remarkable thing about it is that this is a first-year teacher.
All right, 2 minutes coming up.
Papa knows what he can do.
Thank you. Take your books for me. Thank you, Ernie. Thank you, Poppy. Thank you. Tracking me. Okay, in a moment you're going to stop and jot. What could be the reason as to why Homily is so worried about Pod? I want you to use the keywords dangerous. What's so dangerous about Pod's job that's making Homily so worried? Humans. Why are humans a reason for Homily to be worried? And survive. Who might not survive? Why is that making Homily so worried? When I say go, you have 3 minutes to stop and jot. Remember our keywords? 3 minutes. Go. Okay, why might he not survive? Okay, what would happen if you couldn't borrow stuff for the family? What would happen to the family? That's making Homily so worried. Stars in 3, pens down, iPads flat in 2 and 1. Thank you, Ruby. Beautiful stars. Thank you, Iridia. Waiting for everybody's iPad to be flat. Okay, when I say go, you have 1 minute to turn and talk to your partner. Partner 1, share your thoughts as why Homily might be worried about Pod. 30 seconds, go.
Okay, unmute. Let's pause there. Doug.
Great. There's so much that I love about this video. Maybe I'll just say a couple of things, and then Josh, you should build off of that. But this video kind of gets at to me the connection between what I would describe as the sublime and the mundane, which is there's so much. I think there's some really beautiful things here. I love the fact that we're about to go into a discussion, right? The whole class is going to talk about this novel. But first they write. And so, of course, when students write, everybody answers the question, right? So not just the 1 or 2 kids who raise their hand who are highly verbal. And when students answer in writing, it involves desirable difficulty, right? It's more challenging. So it's more likely to encode thinking in students' long-term memory. And of course, one of the most beautiful things about writing is that writing before discussion allows students to unload their working memory, right? It's very hard to do more than one thing with your working memory at a given time. If I'm trying to remember what I wanted to say during the discussion while other people are talking, I won't really be able to listen to them. And what I'll end up with is a classroom where people talk past each other instead of a classroom where people talk to each other. Because after Josh is talking, I'll raise my hand and I'll say something like, what I wanted to say is, which says, I wasn't even listening to what Josh over there was saying because I was, what he said was irrelevant to me. And so just by having them write first before they discuss allows them to be prepared to really connect and feel both have intellectual growth, but also feel a sense of belonging. And I think that that's really beautiful. I'm sure Josh will want to talk about this first. There's such beautiful routines here for when she sends them out to the turn and talk, the room just crackles to life. It's almost percussive. And I think that's beautiful. But then there's just these very mundane things that make the sublime possible. And one of the most important things here is the quality of her directions. They are so crisp and so clear, and she has clearly scripted them and practiced them in advance. So when she gives them, it's abundantly clear that to students that her expectations are clear, and students know how to follow them. And right after those what to do directions, she begins narrating the positive. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Peps. Thank you, Claire. and then can make very, very minor corrections when students are not on task. And so there's a lot of beauty, a lot of sublimeness. Is that a word? Sublimeness. There's a lot of sublimeness in the video, but I think it's also built on this foundation of the mundane that's so important and so easy to overlook. I think you see both of those things here. Before I pass to Josh, can I just a shout out? Emily has done such an incredible job. Like, if we could have 20% of the first year teaching staff looking like this, like, it's a different profession. But also hats off to Max Wakeman, and he's the head at Goldsmith Primary Academy where this is shot, and there had to have been a beautiful climate of support to build this level of excellence in a first year teacher.
I mean, I think if we had 20% of the teachers in the world teaching like that, we would be doing pretty well. Yeah, I mean, I would be so happy if a first year teacher in my school was that much of a rock star. Yeah, so I think like there's a lot of really sophisticated teaching in that clip, but it's underpinned, as you said, Doug, by a lot of the nuts and bolts. Like, I think we can't forget that, like, there's the kind of the nuts and bolts of how to run a lesson, and if we get those right, it's really easy to do things like paired talk, like quick writes. The what to do cycle stuff is absolutely there. She gives a direction, she scans, she does positive narration, as Doug mentioned. She's telling students how long they have at tasks. She's giving them a really crisp start in and out cue so that students know exactly what's expected of them. Her directions are incredibly precise and positive. She ends the task in a very crisp way. But as an English teacher, the other thing which I really enjoyed watching, and I've seen this clip a few times, is how beautifully she sets up what I think of as like sentence parameters. So she's not only giving them a quick write, she's giving them some vocab to use. I think she's probably displayed the vocab on the screen, but the other thing I noticed is that she's using the vocab in a sentence. So use the word dangerous, and then she just gives a beautiful kind of example just out loud to show the students exactly how she would want them to use the word dangerous, but not using it exactly as she would expect them to use it, so that they still have to do a bit of thinking, which I thought was just incredibly well done, and a pretty good move for a first year English teacher. That is sophisticated stuff. So yeah, I absolutely love that clip. Mute, perhaps.
Apologies. I've got a question, Doug. I don't know whether you know. Like, to what degree are those routines shared amongst other teachers within that school? And to what degree, if so, do you think that helps this as a relatively new teacher?
It's a great question, and I think this is one of the things that makes this school so exceptional, is that there's a real sense of like shared craft and shared methodology, and things are pretty consistent across the school. That if every teacher is different. There's theme and variation, but there are consistent principles. There are deeply embedded routines for how we answer questions, means of participation. I think that's a constant. There's the quality of direction giving, etc. And I think that's important, right? Can you be a great teacher on an island? Yes. Is it much harder than if we make teaching a team sport? And if the expectations are consistent across classrooms and students don't have to spend their time and psychological energy figuring out how are the expectations, the norms different in this classroom versus some other classroom. So and I would just say, like, one other thing about the collectiveness of expectations is not only does it make teaching a team sport, it makes teaching a lot more fun and a lot more connected among the staff when we can train and get better together because we have a shared vision of what we're trying to accomplish in the classroom, and we watch each other teach and we get more from it. We have a shared vocabulary. I just think that teaching should not be a lonely profession where you close your door and you do your work and no one ever sees you do it. It should be fun there should be great learning when you get together with your colleagues to study the craft, but it should also be enjoyable and pleasurable, and having a shared model makes that a lot easier, I think.
Awesome. Claire, I'd love to get your take on this.
We've got some questions too, so I'll jump on that in a second. But one of the things that strikes me about this particular clip, and something that I've been talking to someone just last week, is how difficult it can be to teach a trainee teacher or any teacher presence in the classroom. And you know how you get that feedback in a lesson that's like, oh, you built good relationships, or you should try and build better relationships or have more presence. What really strikes me about this is that it probably, a lot of this does come naturally to Emily, but because of those routines, and because of the almost micro scripting you can see, that she's able to be given something really specific about how to have that presence and build those relationships. And there's things in there like just things like doing a countdown. It's not, okay, 3, 2, 1, stop. It's, okay, 3, thank you, Ernie. 2, super David. 1, Ruby, that was excellent. And I think this is where those kinds of techniques, they're not just about the nuts and bolts of the classroom. They can do the gentle stuff too. That sometimes there's a misunderstanding of, if you're going to bring in techniques like this, that you lose the personality or you lose that love and warmth. But what you see here is all of that warmth is so injected into that because of the way that she's doing that. And if you've got a teacher who struggles with those areas of their teaching, there's some tips and tricks here, right, that you can unpick in this model, that you can emulate, that if you are struggling to have that presence, to have that immediate, effortless, natural warmth, there are ways of bringing that in. I think that's really important. We can't just assume that every teacher can immediately do that when they walk into a lesson. Was my take from the beginning of that.
Can I respond to that? Because I think that's so important. I just love that point. And I think there's something really perverse here, which is it's easy to think that preparation and really careful preparation and maybe even practice would be things that would make you mechanical in the classroom. But it's the opposite, which is, one of the reasons to practice something is that so you don't have to think about it, which is a way of, like when we talk about working memory overloads in the classroom, it's not just students whose working memory is overloaded, it's teachers whose working memory is overloaded. And one of the reasons why you can't respond to a student or recognize what's happening for them or connect with them on a relational level is because your working memory is overloaded with, like, how am I going to manage these 30 kids and what am I going to do next? And what should I say for my directions? But if you've scripted your directions in advance and if you've practiced your directions so you can do a countdown with what to do directions and positive narration afterwards, and you've done it 20 times so you can do it with no load on your own working memory, then your working memory is free to look around the classroom and look for the student who's a little bit anxious or the student who's had a little bit of a breakthrough, and suddenly your working memory is free enough that you can allocate it to a higher purpose, and that higher purpose is often relationships and connecting with students.
Love that. Yeah. Like often so basically what we're seeing here is that, like, routines have benefits on multiple levels, right? There's the benefits for the students in terms of their learning. There's a benefit from, like, a belonging piece, like the shared ritual, the shared attention. There's a benefit from, like, a kind of an equity piece because it brings, like, creates a level playing field, increases confidence across the board in terms of participation. And then we have this benefit from, like, teacher cognitive load, so they can be more responsive in the moment. Routines really are like the bedrock of effective teaching in many ways. Right, we're going to pause there, and what I suggest we do is we watch that 90-second clip again, because we've talked about it, and now hopefully we'll be able to kind of see that stuff in action a bit more. And then directly afterwards, we'll watch Pritesh. We'll watch like 90 seconds, a couple of minutes of Pritesh, and then we can pick up on some thoughts on that. All righty, let's see.
Papa knows what he can do.
Thank you. Take your books for me. Thank you, Ernie. Thank you, Poppy. Thank you. Tracking me. Okay, in a moment you're going to stop and jot. What could be the reason as to why Homily is so worried about Pod? I want you to use the keywords dangerous. What's so dangerous about Pod's job that's making Homily so worried? Humans. Why are humans a reason for Homily to be worried? And survive. Who might not survive? Why is that making Homily so worried? When I say go, you have 3 minutes to stop and jot. Remember our keywords? 3 minutes. Go. Okay, why might he not survive?
Okay, and then we're going to dive straight into educational hunk of the year, Pritesh.
Shall I give a little intro, perhaps?
Do it, please. Yeah.
So Pritesh teaches at Arc Zone. It's a school with a highly disadvantaged population in central London. So Pritesh is a really interesting contrast to the teacher in video one. Because Pritesh has been in the game a lot longer. And in fact, we chose to film with Pritesh because Pritesh is on paper one of, if not the best science teacher in the country at secondary level. So he just gets absolutely incredible results. But I think the interesting thing about watching Pritesh teach is that actually to teach like Pritesh is highly achievable. It's not like there's loads of invisible teacher mystique. It's not like, and Pritesh openly says, like, he really struggled to form a teacher persona for the first few years of his career. It is not like he has something kind of invisible thing, which is just like magnetism. And he is using incredibly sophisticatedly a bunch of teach like a champion techniques stitched together kind of in an algorithm, right? That's the mad thing about watching him teach, is that he is he's kind of using a technique and then another technique and then another technique stitched together, and then he does the same pattern again and he does the same pattern again. So since we can deconstruct that, we can actually learn to teach like Pritesh, and since we can learn to teach like Pritesh, we can learn, like, get the same results that he achieves, as in a 9 for every student in his GCSE class. And that's, I think, the fascinating thing about him, is that he achieves so much, but like how he teaches is achievable for everyone.
Let's see the man in action.
We can get bonding between different types of substances. What do you call it when you have a substance made of 2 different types of elements, or 2 or more different types of elements bonded together? What's that word? Heads down. Open 4. If there's 2 or more different types of atom, we call it an element. Close. Compound. Close. Mixture. Close. Heads up. Team, we got 100%. It is indeed compound. So there are lots of different compounds, and that's what we're going to be looking at in detail today. So there are 3 types of bonding that we can find in compounds. Let's read about those. Both hands on rulers. Lovely focus today, team. Starts off, Abdullahi.
There are 3 different types of chemical bond. Ionic, covalent.
Okay, pause there. I say, you say, covalent.
Covalent.
Try again.
Covalent and metallic.
Good. Carry on.
Strong ionic bonding occurs between metal and non-metal atoms. All salts have a strong ionic bonding, e.g., example, sodium chloride, NaCl.
Beautiful reading, merit for you, and also merit for Hamza and Lena earlier for their reading as well. So, whenever you have a metal bonding with a non-metal, what kind of bonding do you get between them? Loud and proud. Khalees?
When a metal and non-metal bond, you get a strong ionic compound.
Really good. We call it a strong ionic bond. I say, you say, strong ionic bond.
Strong ionic bond.
Okay, who likes to put salt on their food? It's not really that good for you. But what is salt? What's the scientific word for salt? Do we know? Yara, I? Good, sodium chloride. How do I know sodium chloride has got ionic bonding in it? Ooh, tell your partners, go.
Sodium is a metal and chlorine is a non-metal. So when you do a
3, 2,
reaction,
1,
you get
hands
sodium
up.
chloride.
Let's hear it. Loving these arms up, team. Go to Mia.
We know that it's ionic compound because it's a non-metal and a metal bonded together.
Good, merit for you, Mia. Which bit is the metal in sodium chloride? On 3, 1, 2, 3.
Sodium.
And chlorine is the 1, 2, 3.
Non-metal.
Good. So therefore, the type of bonding is 3 words. Strong something bonding. Let's say all 3 words together on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Strong ionic bonding.
Smashed it. Right.
Okay. Pritesh, we love you. Thank you for letting us watch you in public. Who would like to go first? Claire, Josh, Doug? Thoughts on what you've seen?
Well, I'll kick us off.
Yeah.
What is Pritesh doing? Well, like, big picture, there is not a wasted second in what he's doing in that class. Like, he is holding student attention, and like, that's a 2-minute clip. I was in that classroom at the back, and I watched him do that for like 45 minutes. He's capturing student attention, and he's either got them fully attending or he's got them rehearsing something. And what that means is that you pop out the other side of the lesson and students have a whole lot of thinking and a whole lot of learning. But he's doing that using like a handful of core techniques. So what did we see there? Well, we saw him using I say, you say, often to correct errors. So that is when he heard a student make an error of pronunciation when reading. He says, I say, you say the word, and then they repeat. We saw him using cold call, a technique which is often like has a bad rap for being kind of cold. But in fact, like when Pritesh does it, it feels loving, it feels warm, it feels like he just really cares about the students and he really wants to hear what they have to say, you know, which I think is cold call used right. He uses paired talk and he uses choral response, which is where he just asks students to pick up on an aspect of what like another student says or what he says. A handful of techniques used with real skill and used to just hold student attention for long periods of time, just like getting into that absolute tons. Keen to hear what Doug has to say on that.
I'm going to just add 2 points. One, I think you really see evidence here of what Claire was talking about, which is use the word algorithmic to describe him, and that's a really funny phrase, and it almost makes you uncomfortable, but it's like theme and variation, right? Like, the individuality of every human on the planet is the product of 4 different, amino acids in RNA sequence, right? Like, algorithmic things can be incredibly unique. It's in the variation.
I think Pritesh is actually a robot, so it's okay.
It's possible. But like, while he's doing these algorithmic moves, there's like this warm smile and the appreciation and the, ooh, nice, because those things are routines for Pritesh too. Not just for students. He's free to be connecting with, he's a very different style from any other teacher, but I think the students feel cared about and seen and connected with there, which I think is interesting. And the second thing I would just point out is that by having this set of like familiar routines for how things work, he achieves what you might describe as a flow state. And a flow state is like when you lose track of time doing a single task. And a flow state is one of the most pleasurable states for a human to be in. And I think, students probably feel like class starts and all of a sudden they look up and it's 45 minutes later and chemistry class is done. And that again is like one of the beautiful benefits of the predictable and familiar set of moves that he's using here.
See, I think that's really interesting about the predictability and the algorithmic sense of things, because actually when you watch this, there is so much variety in that really small amount of time, right? So this is what I think anyone would consider like explicit teaching, which obviously sometimes comes under criticism of, it's the same thing, it's a teacher lecturing, it's boring, and the students are involved, etc., etc. But if you look at that couple of minute clip, we've got explanation, choral response, whole group questioning, reading, paired talk, feedback, a little bit of dual coding as well for the nerds at the back. But actually, there's such a rhythm to all of that it's explicit criticism, but it's a really good answer to the criticism of explicit teaching. It's a good answer to the criticism of that is boring, that it's a lecture, because there is such a rhythm and flow and push and pull in that whole lesson that the flow that you talk about, Doug, is there because there's a variety and because he is making constant decisions to respond to what students are doing. And that is like a bit of a masterclass in that responsive teaching. And when you look at the resource he's clearly got like some kind of booklet or some kind of worksheet that he's got as a base, but he is constantly going away from that resource to be responsive and adaptive to the students in his class. And so I think that so much of that clip is a good argument for why it's not about the resource and it's not about what type of teaching it is. It's about the rhythm and the flow and the adaptation that happens in the moment. And that's the hard bit, right? That's the bit that we need to have lots of skill around. But when we have certain techniques that we can keep coming back to, that rhythm and flow is much easier. And that was what was really striking to me, is how much variety was in something that felt so kind of controlled, but actually still incredibly responsive.
Yeah, couple of things from me. First, just a very kind of like crude, basic thing. I'm always interested in how like we can shape our environment to help us teach and help our students to learn effectively. And like a very simple thing, but Pritesh is stood at his desk with a kind of like a small table in front of him on which there is a visualizer, and he's got a pen. And so while he is narrating, he is highlighting certain things. We couldn't quite see it, but he's highlighting certain things in the workbook that his students share. On the visualizer in front of him, they can all see that being highlighted. But crucially, he doesn't have to turn his back at any point. He is facing the class the whole way through, and as a result can like maintain kind of eye contact. They can see him the whole way through. And I think like such a simple thing, but often, you know, we kind of sometimes forget or overlook those simple kind of logistical, environmental things that can have a big impact over time. And then the second thing just to call out is that sometimes whenever I, you know, talk to people about this video, their instant emotional reaction is one of, oh, there's too much structure there. That doesn't feel good or doesn't feel right, or I don't like that kind of teaching. And just to say that that is like that is in kind of a normal human response to seeing teaching that you're unfamiliar with. So, you know, great to be watching this stuff. We're here to kind of provoke thought and conversation. But often what happens is when people kind of watch that, if they can kind of, you know, set that emotional response to the side and really engage with what's going on, you know, people tend to get to the point where they see that a lot of structure in the classroom is actually what liberates students in the end, because those students are clearly learning so much and developing high levels, not only of like academic knowledge, but confidence in their responses. That means that whenever they go on and leave school, they're going to have like so many more chances and opportunities in life. And so I think like the kind of the nature of structure and how the role it plays in school and over time in students' lives is a kind of like a messy, complex one that has orders over like multiple effects over multiple times. And so that's just a good one for us to just kind of hold in mind when we watch this stuff.
I think just to like, you know, we've shown 2 videos of teachers being absolutely excellent. They are really different. There is not only one way to apply technique in the classroom. There are a bunch of commonalities between the 2 techniques that those teachers use, like a whole bunch. But like the 2 classrooms looked completely different. They're both brilliant, but they're also like using techniques with their own favored method of teaching. Emily wants to be out in the classroom. Pritesh wants to be rooted in one spot. They have their reasons. So like there are a bunch of ways that you can apply techniques, but be completely different and teach in your own style. And I think that's really, really important. Is like techniques free teachers to do a brilliant job. I don't think that they hold them to like teaching the same as each other. And we've evidenced that by showing 2 videos with lots of the same techniques with 2 completely different teaching styles at the heart of the video.
Brilliant. Doug, any last words, or Claire, any last words before we kind of like jump in? Josh, I'm going to hand over to you in a second.
Yeah, let's hand to Josh. And maybe the only thing I would say is just, you know, your point there about it's actually similar techniques, but a very different style. You know, each teacher is really true to themselves and to the instructional needs of their classroom and context. But I think that also reflects the value of coaching, that so much of what we do as coaching is help someone to unlock the best version of themselves through a finite set of techniques, or at least of concepts that we're using and adapting. That, you know, again, like just because we're using the same set of tools does not mean we're sculpting the same thing.
I think what also strikes me with both clips is how democratizing they both are in terms of bringing students into every moment of what's happening in that classroom. Even if it's just the language of like talking about, Pritesh talks about them being a team, it's the choral responses, it's the constantly bringing different students in to answer. All of that, it feels so democratic in terms of bringing every voice into that situation, even though, again, actually the teacher's doing a lot of explicit teaching there. And I think that for me is the bit that like makes me feel a bit warm and fuzzy, is that every single child in that room, you can tell, just feels, you know, can feel really good about what's happening in that classroom.
Super. Okay, we're going to hand over to Josh in a second to talk a little bit about, you know, what Steplab's doing in order to be able to kind of provide more video models for schools around the country. But first, just I want to pull out a quick comment from the wonderful John Lunn, who has pointed out that, yeah, we're all big fans, Johan, that whenever he visited Soam, kind of alluding to my question earlier to Doug, that every classroom teacher used the same Soam techniques, what they call essentials, as it were, Soam essentials. And essentially that allows all of those teachers' lives to be a lot easier, because essentially when you use this kind of same routines in multiple classrooms, students learn them much more quickly, and as a result, they become automated much more quickly. This is one of the reasons why, when Pritesh uses the same techniques as other teachers in his school, that new teachers are able to come in, use the same technique, and get a great response off the bat. And consistency among staff is this kind of like superpower that schools have, but also makes it like good for workload and really easy for new teachers joining. Right, we're going to take a pause there on Pritesh. We could talk about him forever, definitely. Such a incredible teacher, as we said. And Josh, I'd just like to throw over to you and Doug and maybe Claire to talk a little bit about the partnership that we've established between Steplab and Teach Like a Champion. What our plans are, if there's anything we've built so far, what's on offer to people.
Sure. Yeah. So we're Teach Like a Champion super fans at Team Steplab, and hopefully the job we're doing for schools is helping schools to grow teachers just like Emily and Pritesh, through making sure that every teacher has access to like a great coach who can support them to build great routines and develop the techniques that suit them and teach in that way. So we've got a bunch of people using Steplab, and one of the most common things that schools would say is like, well, cool, can we have the Teach Like a Champion stuff on there? And what we found that loads of leaders were doing is they were kind of like taking the stuff that's on Steplab and putting it into the shape of Teach Like a Champion. And that felt like not a great use of leaders' very precious time. And so we are a kind of extremely thrilled to say that from Monday, it's already launched. The Teach Like a Champion content, it will be in the library on Steplab, such that I'll show you in a second, such that school leads can take the Teach Like a Champion content, give it to teachers, give it to coaches, shape it into their own teaching and learning playbooks or policies that go out to coaches and can drive great mentoring in their schools. So that's kind of the why. I don't know if anyone else has anything to say on that before I do a very quick demo. No? Alrighty. So let me share screen. I'm just going to show you, I'm not going to show you loads of Steplab. I'm going to show you the library. Love it if you would tell me, Peps, when you can see the screen.
I can see the screen, Josh.
Lovely stuff. Okay, so if you would like, and you work with Steplab, then you can have the Teach Like a Champion content added to your library. So here we see Teach Like a Champion. What we did is it's modeled on the chapter structure of TLAC, Teach Like a Champion 3.0. So for example, we might look in building ratio through writing, and inside that we can see two specific techniques. For example, everybody writes, and if we zoom into everybody writes, we can see a bunch of very precise kind of action steps, things that a teacher can get better at in their teaching between one week and the next. For example, we might look at silent solo. Now, alongside that, and the really, really exciting thing about this is that there is a bunch of other content, just like the rest of this content on Steplab, that can really drive and power good quality coaching. So silent solo has a really crisp, clear, and precise success criteria. For example, to do silent solo really well, and we actually saw it in Emily's video, Emily made her directions really clear. She narrated when she set students off to work. I don't think she actually did build supportive accountability, but that's one of the things that you can do. And obviously she had built a really clear culture. Now, as well as that, there is a model, and we've got some of the, like Teach Like a Champion have been filming model videos since before I joined the teaching profession, which means that they have, the world's best library of models of expert teachers. And there is so much variety. So there is 2 different sets of primary videos, 2 different sets of secondary teachers, including, importantly, teachers in the UK context, and 2 montages. The thing I like about this montage is that Sadie McCleary in this video was one of the team that worked incredibly hard to build this content. And if we play the video,
we're going to
see Sadie in her lovely pink cardigan, being a silent solo rock star there. So that's oh, and sorry, I forgot to say, and the other thing is that really powers great PD and coaching is that as well as the success criteria, each step has this really incredibly precise rehearsal task, which is like the things that you need to do if you want to, or you want to support a teacher to implement this into your classroom tomorrow. Okay, and this is like basically just do these things, and it's like very likely that you're going to be able to make a positive change using silent solo. So to go back, like again, there is an absolute wealth of content here. I'm going to highlight one more thing, slightly cheekily, because this, I think, is a record that at one point I did have a full head of hair. Wanted to get a bit closer. Will you look at that, Barnet? I don't know where it's gone. Okay, so you can see, again, like there's hundreds of model videos, and there's hundreds and hundreds of these super precise, brilliant action steps. And that's the demo done. Anyone, Doug, you got any comments to make about this?
First, just a thanks, because it was an immense amount of work for you and Claire and members of my team to get it done. It's, you know, we often feel the anxiety that we have so many great videos of teachers, and they mostly just live in our files here at TLAC Towers. And now we have this real opportunity to get them out to people where they can, you know, one of my favorite things about training teachers is showing them multiple examples of a technique, because different teachers, you know, they do it similarly, but they do it differently. Emily and Pritesh both give really good what to do directions, but with a slightly different vibe. And so when you see multiple examples, like you know, like you've done the work to load here, people can much more easily find a version of themselves in the video. And I think that that's really important.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, you can stop sharing screen there. Right, folks, we've got about 10 minutes left. And at this point, we're just going to open up to questions from the floor. And so very happy to take questions about the kind of the product, as it were, that's collaboration that you've just seen. If you've got any questions about that, about access, about what's on there, about how it works, but also just any questions about the teaching videos that you've seen and how it works and stuff like that. So if you can stick any questions that you have in the chat, then we'll keep an eye on those and we'll throw those out. And Claire, do you want to pick up now if there have been any questions so far that you'd like to throw out for us?
Yeah, there's one interesting question here that I've just seen, which is about what would you kind of say to staff who feel that this kind of high stake performance for someone who's teaching 5 hours a day, every day, would be really challenging. And actually, when you watch Pritesh and you watch Emily and you go, wow, okay, how do they manage that? I think it's a really interesting question.
Well, I'll just say really quickly, I think it actually, like, having routine means that teaching is significantly less tiring than if you're, you know, struggling and doing things differently in every lesson every day. You know, like the thing is, Pritesh's students know exactly what to do. They're used to being taught in that way. Pritesh teaches in the same way every lesson. But importantly, Pritesh knows exactly how he's going to teach his students, which means that he can get in there and perform at that level, but really not expend loads of energy, right? He doesn't have to do loads of thinking. He doesn't have to spend his time managing behavior in an exhausting way. Actually, like, you know, and I think so basically, like, having a core repertoire of your own favored teaching techniques, the way that you teach your class, means that you can perform like at that high level, but actually, you know, your job is much more relaxing than someone who's flying by the seat of their pants lesson after lesson, as I did for many years of my career and was tired. Doug, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, mostly to agree. What's exhausting about teaching is not succeeding. That, you know, it's actually quite, it's working hard and not feeling like you have a lesson that looks like you want it to have. But when the lesson, you know, people often call it workload, but often what they mean is frustration and exhaustion. So I think, you know, your point about not, you know, when you have clear routines, there's a lot less off-task student behavior. And when there is off-task student behavior, you have the free time to deal with it and nip it in the bud. But also there's a really fascinating principle of cognitive science called Hicks' law, which basically says the amount of time and working memory it takes to make a decision varies in accord with the number of choices that you have. And I think what's so interesting about maybe Pritesh's video in particular, but both of these videos, is that they're actually making decisions about a very small number of choices. It's a finite set of moves, and so it looks more complex than it is, which is Pritesh asks a question, and maybe sometimes he gets a lot of hands, and so then he's going to take volunteers, but maybe sometimes he gets only 2 or 3 hands, and he knows that means he's going to turn and talk, right? And that's a very simple decision for him, because it's like, it's turn and talk, it's cold call, it's call and response, or it's volunteers, or it's stop and jot, right? That's a really simple decision to make. And so that simplifies my lesson preparation in some ways, because I know exactly how I'm going to deliver it, and the delivery part is habit for me.
What you just started with there, Doug, around like what it feels like when you're a teacher when things aren't going very well is horrible. And we know, right, that success breeds motivation, not the other way around. And so if you're a teacher and you're not feeling successful, how motivated do you feel to get up in the morning and go into that classroom again and again and again? And then it's these little things that we can do that just can make our classrooms feel more joyful. And I think that's always been for me, like when I've seen things unlock with a teacher that said, like, actually they've nailed a few routines that have just made their classroom feel more joyful for them as a teacher, because it's easier and there's more success. And if you're feeling like that every lesson that you're having, suddenly that day goes really quickly. Why it's so important that we're training teachers really well.
Nice comment from Georgina Klein, just building on this, saying, it takes time to save time. I think, yeah, this is a great example of that. Absolutely, Georgina. Yeah, and I think, we know Pradesh, and I can confirm that he gets to the end of the day and he has loads of energy. He's not wiped out. But important to recognize that it's not just, Pradesh is enjoying himself and, putting in a good effort, but his students, importantly, are putting in lots of attention and effort as well, and that's probably the most important thing that's going on there for us to notice.
Perhaps a lot of questions about how schools can get access to this content, or actually if they're already using Steplab, can it be added to their school's playbook?
Yeah, how does that work, and do you have to use it?
No, there's no obligation to use it. Like, if you want access to the Teach Like a Champion content, firstly you have to be a Steplab user. You can just send us an email and we'll be in touch with you about unlocking it for you. If you already use Steplab and you've built your school's playbook using Steplab, can you add the Teach Like a Champion content and their videos? Absolutely, yes, you can. It's really easy to just start dragging in Teach Like a Champion steps and their videos. So you can basically populate your school's playbook. You don't need to change it. If you've got an order and a structure for your playbook that works for you, you can just begin populating that with Teach Like a Champion steps and videos. You can have a mix of Steplab steps and videos and Teach Like a Champion steps and videos. You can have a beautiful combo of both. It's infinitely flexible. The choice is yours. And again, if you want access to the Teach Like a Champion content, just send us a message at hello@steplab.co. Claire will put it into the chat and we will send you some stuff about how we can unlock that for you.
Wonderful. And Claire, before I hand over to you to just wrap things up, one last question, Josh, from Maria de la Torre, who says, when are we going to have Steplab and TLAC in Spanish?
Good question.
How is your Spanish, Josh?
Yeah, it's muy bueno.
You're going to dub, hoping you can dub all of these videos.
Oh, yeah. No, Doug, you've translated. TLAC will be Spanish translated, I'll bet.
We've done some translation, actually. It's not inconceivable. My good friend Rodrigo Lopez on the call, we could probably put something together, I bet.
Cool. Watch this space, Maria. Claire, over to you to wrap things up.
So thank you so much for coming, everyone. Given how many questions there are, clearly more people want to spend some time with Doug and Josh. And guess what? You can. So October the 14th and 15th, we've got a special 2-day event with Doug, with Josh, with the TLAC team, with the Steplab team, all coming together to do 2 days on teaching techniques with TLAC, and then how those can be implemented in practice through great PD with Steplab, bringing those two awesome things together. So if you wanted to join us on the 14th and 15th, as you've signed up to this webinar, you're going to get an email that says, would you like to come along? And there's some links in there as well. There are so many questions. We've tried to answer all the ones that we can. If you do have any further questions, feel free to just email us at hello@steplab.co. We're always happy to respond and give you any information that you need. And I think that probably is about time for us to wrap up. So
the quick question from Tom, the PD on the 2 days which we've just shared the event by, that's what to do cycle, isn't it? That's what the training's on, right? From your
engaging academics.
Oh, engaging academics. Oh, I got it wrong.
I'm always the last to know, honestly.
Okay, I think it's what to do cycle, to be honest. But it's actually click the event and you will know because it'll be written there.
Yeah, there are several. Also, I think as well, it's important to say there's going to be lots of different techniques over the 2 days that we're all going to be incorporating, because that's the nature of bringing them all together in a coherent structure. So lots of things to learn, lots of things to engage with. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined us this evening. Recordings will be with you within the next couple of days. Any final words from Doug or Josh before we go? Thank you, Josh, Doug, Peps.
My pleasure. See you guys. Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.